a BioBlitz is a concentrated period of biological recording. That's probably the easiest way of describing it. Tends to be 24 hours, maybe a bit longer, maybe a bit shorter. And the idea is you get a whole bunch of people into a particular space to try and identify as many species as they can in this kind of concentrated period of time. So that's the essence of it. It brings together experts, naturalists. It brings together ordinary members of the public and families and schools and a whole bunch of different people all in this kind of shared enterprise. And one of the things that actually was said by one of our colleagues in the conference earlier was, it taps into that same thing as programs like Time Team and so on, the kind of jeopardy of short space of time. So that's the BioBlitz. There are lots of them. So apparently, I am told, there were 37 2 years ago. There were 34 last year, held about level. And there were 65 this year. And those of us involved in BioBlitz are hoping that that number again stays steady or continues to increase. We think they're great. And those of us who've been involved in BioBlitz have been down the back end of the hall today, and we've been sharing stories. We've been telling each other things that we did, things that worked well, things that didn't work so well, trying to learn from each other, trying to be honest with each other, and trying to build on that for the future. So that's been what we've been doing out the back today. One of the things that's come out of our discussions today is Bioblitz Diversity as opposed to biodiversity. The range of people who are organising these kinds of events is large. So we've got schools, museums, wildlife trusts, the National Trust, research organisations and universities and research councils, charities, local authorities and government agencies, wildlife groups, the media. All of these different organisations are organising things that they call BioBlitzes and that have these kind of shared characteristics. And they're doing them for rather different reasons, and we'll come back to that. So some people are doing it because they want the biological records. They want to know the bugs and the trees and so on that are in that patch of land. Other people are doing it because they want to engage the public, and a BioBlitz is a good way of engaging the public, and the biological records, although important, are secondary. Other people are doing it, Oxford's case, we were doing it as a press and PR media stunt. And the public and the biological records, although important, were secondary. Other people are doing it as a school's educational thing, a great way of engaging kids with biology and ecology and so on. So there are different reasons for doing it, and actually within the same BioBlitz, different people have different reasons for doing it. So within the Oxford BioBlitz, the Science Oxford, which organised the whole thing, we were doing it as a press and PR thing and public engagement, but the guys... The experts who came and did the recording for us, some of them, real-world experts in their fields, they weren't doing it for that reason. They were doing it because they wanted to see if they could find some interesting bugs. What could they see? So there's always this kind of tension between the different purposes of the different organisations involved in these big, complex, I might say messy partnerships. And we have to, negotiate those. And all of us, I'm sure everybody in this room is familiar with that. I won't go on about it anymore. BioBlitzes are hard. They're not well funded, if they're funded at all. They bring together this multiplicity of partners. They're large outdoor events, and as a result, they are subject to the weather. You don't always find that the public are that interested, actually. You think they're going to come, and they don't. Sometimes you're within a large organisation which isn't that interested and doesn't necessarily want to support you. They're large, one-off events. Those are hard. They're genuinely hard things to pull off. I've talked about diversity of objectives within the organisation. That's why they're hard. They're great, though, because they give people an easy entry point into real science. This is what real scientists do. They go out and they look under leaves and they say, oh, look. Some real scientists. But this is a window into real science for people. They provide a very good media angle. The Oxford BioBlitz got better press coverage probably than anything else we've ever done. Would that be fair? I think we got Radio 4, we had local press coming out of our ears. It was terrific. They really loved it. It gives you this focus for a concentrated burst of effort. So although large one-off events are hard, large one-off events are great because everybody focuses in on this one moment in time. I'll burst into song. They give you an opportunity to engage schools in a way that is often hard. Again, the one-off event thing is good. They're great fun, terrific fun. Hard work, but, all the hard fun, to coin a phrase. They bring together lots and lots of different constituencies. As I said, that diversity of objectives is because we've got people from totally different areas. We've got science museums, we've got biological recorders, we've got entomologists, we've got all these different people coming together who wouldn't necessarily normally do so. I was in the session earlier where we were, the education session in this room this morning, where we were talking about the deficit, the nature deficit. Well, here's a way of getting out of that, getting past the problem that kids can't engage with nature. We're bringing nature into the places where people live. In Oxford, we're doing this right in the middle of the city. I know they do the same in Cambridge. I know they do the same in other places. This is absolutely, there's wildlife on your doorstep. Go out and find it. Amazing wildlife. And I'd forgotten this, and I wrote it in at the end when we were in the session, because somebody reminded me, actually, it's a very good way of getting biological records, as it happens. And that just, that tells you that I'm coming out of this from a public engagement science museum's perspective, but actually we had people in there from the Biological Record Centre and so on who were saying, yeah, there's real data that's being generated here. So that's that. Now, these are some of the things, so this is then the outputs of today, very briefly. These are some things we should stop doing as a BioBlitz network. We should stop duplicating our efforts. At the moment, we're existing in isolation. A lot of us are producing the same recording sheet, in Oxford as is being used, in Cornwall as is being used. Actually, we can just save ourselves a hell of a lot of bother there. I've written institutional memory up here, you can't read it, but it's this idea that actually what we did in Oxford is applicable down the road 2 weeks later. We should definitely stop climate change. Everybody, can we stop that, please? An awful lot of our events this year got rained off. Of those 60 events, I don't know how many. And that's just a function of doing large outdoor events. Hopefully it won't be this rainy again next year. We'll see. But there's something there, and there's a limit to what you can do about that. And this was just an internal thing that we felt like we were sending lots of complex emails to each other, and actually we should do shorter emails more often. We then talked about what we should do. Well, we should try and coordinate a little bit our brand, let's call it that. We discussed the name BioBlitz and whether it was a good name or an unhelpful name. We're going to stick with it. But what we're going to do is kind of maybe work together to get a little strapline for it or something so that it becomes a bit more meaningful. BioBlitz on its own, if you've never come across it before, doesn't really mean much. But if we can find a little 5-word thingy, then that might help. And then we can all start, the Oxford one will tie better to the other ones going on around the country, and it might start to make a bit more sense. There's a question as to whether we're actually two things. There are BioBlitzes which generate biological records, and there are BioBlitzes which engage the public. And they needn't be the same thing. In Oxford this year, what we're going to do is we're going to have the Oxford Festival of Nature, which we've stolen from Bristol. We're going to have the Oxford Festival of Nature, which incorporates the Oxford BioBlitz. That might make a bit more sense, again, to the people out there who've never come across this idea before. But there are kind of two different strands to BioBlitz. We need to decide, as a bunch of guys, how we feel about those two strands and whether they're two things or one thing. Some other stuff that we said, think about the name, use existing networks, again, coordinate our efforts better. We rely a lot on volunteers, because we're very badly funded. if at all, then we rely on the biological experts, the wildlife experts giving their time for free, on students giving their time for free to help marshal and, do all that kind of stuff. We've got to nurture those volunteers and use them really well. And that's something that we can all do better. I'm talking to a bunch of people who know what I'm on about. And the final thing that I've got here is about when we've engaged the public and we've done all this great stuff with them, we need to think about what we're going to do with them next. And we need to be able to manage their expectations as to what they're going to do next. So some of that is about things like iSpot, which, these are sort of web-based tools that they can go and access subsequently and upload their records. There's something there, but there's other things maybe about sending them off to other places. And, lots of people do this. Now that you've done this, why not go and visit these places or watch these programs or visit this website? So there's something there that we need to work on. That's it. Thank you very much.